Have you ever had someone look at your design work and say, wow, you are such an amazing artist? And maybe you smiled and said thank you, but somewhere in the back of your mind you think to yourself, that's not exactly what I do. Because while graphic design and art share a lot of the same DNA, they're not exactly the same thing. Both use color, composition, typography, imagery, creativity, and visual storytelling. They both require skill, patience, and an understanding of aesthetics. But the biggest difference comes down to one simple question. Who is this made for? In this video today, I'm going to break down the real difference between graphic design and art, why design isn't just making things look pretty, and why designers and artists have completely different goals, and why understanding the difference actually makes you a better creative. So whether you're a designer, an artist, a creative, or someone who just loves aesthetics, this video is for you. Let's start with art. At its core, it is a form of expression. An artist usually starts with a feeling, an idea, or an expression that they want to explore. A painter might want to make a piece because they're processing grief. A photographer might capture a certain moment because they want to preserve a feeling. A sculptor might make something abstract because they want people to explore an emotion. The artist's personal vision is often the starting point. The question that an artist is usually asking is, what do I want to express? Now, that's not to say that art can't communicate with an audience. Great art absolutely does. It could challenge people, inspire conversation, make us see the world differently. But artists, they have more freedom in deciding what the work is going to say, how it looks, or what message they want to explore. Where graphic design, it works a little bit differently. A designer usually doesn't start with what do I personally want to make today. Instead, we usually start with what problem do I need to solve. The client, they usually have a goal. A business, they need to communicate something. And our audience, they need to understand the information. Or sometimes our problem is that we need a product to stand out. A designer's goal is to take a problem and come up with a visual solution, some way to help people understand that message. That is the very core of graphic design. This is probably the biggest mindset shift between art and design. Artists, they have the freedom to create something completely personal. They could make something confusing, strange, uncomfortable on purpose, or even intentionally difficult to understand. That could often be the entire point. Now, let's imagine if a designer created a menu that is intentionally impossible to read, or they create a website, but then the viewer doesn't know how to purchase anything, or create a warning sign that looks aesthetically pleasing, but then people don't understand the danger. Technically, it might be aesthetically impressive, but it failed as design. Because design has a responsibility to the audience. A designer has to think about who is seeing this. What do they need to know? How quickly can they understand it? What actions should they take? Good design isn't just about creating something beautiful. It's about creating something that's effective. And sometimes that means making choices that aren't necessarily your favorite. The client, they might request a certain style. A brand, it might need a specific tone. The audience, they might respond to something different than your personal style. And this is where designers have to separate their personal taste from what the project needs. One of the biggest differences between art and design is that designers, we usually work within constraints. And I know, the word constraints might sound like a bad thing. As creatives, we like to imagine freedom with no restrictions. But interestingly, when it comes to design, having restraints actually helps you in the creative process. A designer, we might have to work with an existing brand identity. They might have specific colors that they use. They might have a certain audience that they need to reach. They might have a deadline, a budget, or technical requirement. At first, those limitations might feel frustrating, but solving those problems, that's where the real creativity in design happens. A designer is not creating in an empty space. We are taking all the pieces of information and finding the best solution. It's almost like putting together a puzzle, and the satisfaction, it comes from putting those pieces together in a way that works. One misconception, and I hear this a lot, is graphic designers just make things look pretty. And honestly, that one statement, it actually undermines what graphic designers do. Making something that's visually appealing is one small part of the process. As a designer, we're constantly solving problems. How do we make this information easier to understand? How do I work with 3 different languages on the page? How do we guide someone's attention? How do we create trust? How do we make the brand memorable for all the right reasons? How do we communicate emotion without using a single word? Every single decision that we make as a designer has a purpose. Why is the logo placed there? Why is that color being used? Why is this body of text larger than the other? Why is there empty space? Why is the layout organized this way? A good designer isn't decorating. A good designer is making intentional choices. Another very interesting thing to me is how success is judged. Art is often very subjective. 2 people could look at a painting and have 2 completely different reactions. One person might find it beautiful and the other person doesn't connect to it at all. And both opinions can be valid. But design, it often has more objective goals. Did the greater audience understand the message? Did the customer find what they need? Did the packaging stand out on the shelf? Did the brand become recognizable? Did the poster convince someone to attend the event? A design can be visually stunning, but not communicate effectively. If it hasn't communicated effectively, then it's not successful. And that doesn't mean that design can't be emotional or meaningful. Actually, the best designs often are, but usually emotion is being used to support a larger purpose. Absolutely. And this is where things get very interesting. The relationship between art and design doesn't have to be one or the other situation. There is actually a lot of overlap. Graphic designers, we use artistic skills. We need creativity. We need to understand composition and color theory, things like balance, contrast, and visual storytelling. Many designers are actually very exceptional illustrators, photographers, and artists. The difference is not the tools being used. The difference is the intention behind those tools. A painter, they might make a beautiful landscape that captures their emotional connection to nature. A designer might create a beautiful landscape illustration because it communicates a travel brand. The 2 images itself could look similar, but what's changed is the purpose. Okay, and this is probably one of the hardest lessons for new designers. When you're creating art, your personal expression is the focus. But when you're designing, your personal preferences are only one piece of the puzzle. Sometimes the best design choices that you can make aren't the ones that you personally love. Sometimes you have to remove your favorite font. Sometimes you have to simplify your concept. Sometimes you have to completely change your original idea to serve the purpose of the audience. And that can be really difficult for new designers, because as creatives, we're naturally attached to our work. But professional designers, we learn that not everyone has to love our design. The goal, it's does my design accomplish what it needs to do? And that small understanding, it separates design from simply creating. They serve different purposes. Art asks questions. Design provides solutions. Art is allowed to explore ideas, emotions, and perspectives. Design helps us communicate and organize information. The world needs both. The world needs artists who challenge us and make us feel. The world needs designers that make information accessible. And honestly, many creatives, much like myself, exists somewhere in between them. A designer can create personal work, and an artist, they could create commercial work. The categories aren't boxes that limit you. They are simply different ways of thinking. If you're a graphic designer who has felt insecure because someone has called your work art, graphic design is not less than art. It's a different discipline with its own challenges, skills, and philosophy. A designer is not just someone who makes something beautiful. A designer is someone who tries to understand people, someone who takes an idea and transforms it into a visual experience, someone who solves problems through creativity. And honestly, that's a really powerful thing. So next time someone asks you what the difference is between graphic design and art, you could answer them. Art is often about expressing an idea. Design, it's about having an idea be understood. And the best designers know how to use creativity and strategy to make something truly meaningful. But okay, guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really enjoyed talking about it. If you did, give it a like, subscribe for more videos just like this because I make them every single week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!